Glen Campbell was one of those rare country artists who seemed to transcend the boundaries of music itself. Even if you didn't grow up on country radio, chances are you still heard his voice drifting through the kitchen on a Sunday morning, or maybe playing in the background on an old family road trip. From Rhinestone Cowboy to Wichita Lineman, he crafted songs that felt like personal stories, simple, relatable, and deeply human. Today, Glen's legacy endures not only through his timeless music, but also because of how bravely he faced Alzheimer's, reminding us that behind every legend is a very human story. The beauty of Glen's music and the heartbreak of his final years continue to resonate with fans of all ages, especially those who remember a time when a well-written country tune could carry someone through life's toughest moments. Glen's early life set the stage for everything he would become. Born into a large family in rural Billstown, Arkansas in 1936, he grew up in a tight-knit home where money was scarce, but love and laughter were abundant. He learned to play guitar as a young boy, picking out melodies by ear, and often performing with relatives at small gatherings. Country music at that point was something folks turned to after long days of work, an escape that reminded them they weren't alone in their struggles. For Glen, it was also a path out of the cotton fields, a chance to pursue something bigger. By the time he was a teenager, he'd moved west and found session work in Los Angeles, right in the thick of what would become a golden age for both cinema and music. This was the period often referred to as the New Hollywood era, when fresh creative voices in film paralleled bold innovations in music. Glen Campbell quickly carved out a place in that atmosphere, becoming part of the famous Wrecking Crew studio group and playing guitar on iconic recordings for artists like Frank Sinatra and the Monkees. While he wasn't on the silver screen in a dramatic sense, he was very much in the cultural mix of that transformative time. That mix of tradition and experimentation would define his future contributions to country music and popular culture. His star rose steadily in the 1960s, culminating in a string of hit songs that have become cornerstones of American music. Gentle on My Mind, By the Time I Get to Phoenix, and Galveston showcased not only his smooth vocal style, but also his unique ability to tell a story in a way that felt intimate and honest. Then in 1969, Glen took a step onto the big screen himself, starring alongside John Wayne in the classic Western True Grit. Though the film was overshadowed by Wayne's larger-than-life persona, Glen's foray into acting highlighted the breadth of his talent. This marked an important crossover moment for country music stars in Hollywood, adding credibility to his already impressive career. By 1975, Rhinestone Cowboy catapulted him to new heights of fame, and the song's catchy melody and optimistic lyrics captured the public's imagination. It was the mid-1970s, a time when country music was making a strong push into mainstream pop charts, and Glen found himself at the forefront of that movement. Of course, the songs everyone remembers are Rhinestone Cowboy and Wichita Lineman, but there were two lesser-known events in Glen's career that truly illuminate his character. The first one happened in 1970 when he starred in a film called Norwood, a quirky comedy also featuring his True Grit co-star Kim Darby. Though Norwood never achieved the legendary status of True Grit, it's one of those curious career detours that offered Glen a chance to show off his comedic timing and easygoing charm. Friends later recalled that Glen poured himself into the project wholeheartedly, practicing lines late into the night, determined to prove he could hold his own as an actor. Even if critics had mixed feelings about the film, his dedication shone through. The second lesser-known project occurred in 1974 when Glen temporarily stepped in as host for the Midnight Special, a popular music variety show. Those who tuned in saw him introduce not just country acts, but also rock and pop performers, bridging musical worlds that often felt miles apart. He had a warm, genuine way of connecting with guests, making them feel right at home on stage. This willingness to cross genres, to appreciate music in all its forms, spoke volumes about Glen's open-minded spirit. He wasn't a purist. He believed in good songs, good performances, and good fellowship, values that would continue to define his later life and legacy. As he moved into the 1980s, Glen's career naturally shifted. He was still touring and recording, but the music scene had changed dramatically. Synthesizers and big hair rock had begun to dominate, and some country purists accused Glen of pandering to pop audiences. He faced questions about whether he was country enough, but behind closed doors, Glen reportedly wasn't losing any sleep over such debates. His main concern was connecting with people, whether through a straightforward country ballad or a pop-inflected crossover. Close friends and industry insiders often spoke of his knack for ignoring narrow definitions of what a country singer should be, focusing instead on how a song made him feel. That genuine love for the craft kept him going even as the roller coaster of public opinion soared and dipped around him. As the years wore on, Glen's personal life became more complicated. He openly battled alcoholism and had several high-profile romances and marriages that played out in the tabloids. One marriage in particular ended in a swirl of controversy and heartbreak. A longtime family friend has shared that after one heated argument, Glen broke down in tears, confiding that he felt like a contradiction. A man who sang so convincingly about love and devotion, yet struggled to hold on to stability in his own home. These emotional lows took a toll on him, both physically and spiritually, and you could hear that strain in certain late career recordings, songs that were tinged with a wistful longing for peace and clarity. But Glen was always one to keep moving, to keep playing, to keep trying to find the right chord or lyric that might help him make sense of life's chaos. In the 2000s, Glen found a sort of creative revival. He released a series of albums that many fans feel rivaled his earlier work in their emotional depth. One of the projects that often goes unmentioned in mainstream discussions is Meet Glen Campbell, released in 2008. The record was a collection of covers from contemporary rock and pop bands, including songs by Green Day and Foo Fighters. It was an unconventional move, yet it showcased Glen's enduring eagerness to explore new musical terrain. Younger listeners were surprised that this older country icon could rework modern rock songs with sincerity and skill. Critics were largely appreciative, calling it a testament to Glen's open-hearted approach to music. For fans who had grown up with him, it was a breath of fresh air, reminding them that age doesn't have to limit artistic curiosity. But behind that creative spark, another battle was brewing, one far more daunting than fleeting debates about musical genre. In 2011, Glen publicly revealed that he had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. Initially, his family noticed small lapses in memory, forgotten lyrics, misplaced items, repeating the same stories over and over. At first, it was easy to chalk it up to aging, but doctors confirmed the devastating news, and Glen decided in a characteristically bold move to share this diagnosis with the world. He wasn't the type to hide or quietly fade away. Instead, he embarked on a farewell tour, determined to go out doing what he loved best, playing music and connecting with his fans. Friends and colleagues were initially hesitant, worried about how he'd cope on stage as the disease progressed. But Glen insisted. He wanted to show people that life could still have purpose and beauty, even in the face of such a cruel condition. His wife, Kim, and their children played vital roles during that final tour. One eyewitness who attended a show in Phoenix remembered seeing Kim quietly stand near the back of the stage, subtly guiding him if he lost his place or forgot a chord. At times, Glen's memory would falter and he'd introduce a song incorrectly. Other times, he would forget the set list entirely. But then he'd launch into a guitar solo with the same effortless precision that had propelled him to stardom decades before. In those moments, it felt like Glen's heart and hands remembered what his mind was starting to lose. Audience members openly wept, but not merely out of sadness. There was a sense of awe that a man facing such a steep decline could still offer his gift with so much courage and joy. During this period, emotional anecdotes poured in from fans who met him backstage. They spoke of brief glimpses of his old self, jokes and stories that would surface and then vanish just as quickly. Friends and family members described it as a heartbreaking dance where each day brought something new, a cherished memory returning followed by a sudden moment of confusion. Country legend Vince Gill once commented that Glen's last years were a profound reminder of why music matters. Vince recalled, he might not remember what he had for breakfast, but he could still recall every note on that guitar. It's like the songs were in his soul, woven into who he was at the deepest level. As Glen's illness advanced, he eventually had to stop performing altogether. The final months of his public presence were marked by a documentary called Glen Campbell, I'll Be Me, which followed him and his family on the farewell tour. The film was met with praise for its raw and unfiltered look at Alzheimer's. You see Glen at his best, still making witty remarks and shredding on the guitar, and then you see him at his most vulnerable, desperately trying to piece together bits of himself in the face of memory loss. The documentary sparked conversations nationwide about elder care, the stigma around dementia, and the emotional toll that chronic illnesses inflict upon families. It wasn't just a movie about a legendary musician. It was a mirror that reflected countless others going through similar struggles. In those final years, Glen's condition ignited public debates over how society treats older artists and individuals suffering from mental decline. Some people questioned whether it was ethical for him to continue performing when he clearly struggled with memory loss. Others championed his bravery, viewing his farewell tour and documentary as a vital awareness campaign for Alzheimer's. Industry veterans such as Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers spoke up in support, praising Glen and his family for shedding light on a disease that is often tucked away in the shadows. A few critics, however, argued that the documentary and final tour risked exploiting his condition for commercial gain. Yet those who knew Glen personally rejected that viewpoint. They emphasized his genuine desire to make the most of whatever time he had left, doing the one thing that truly made him feel alive. By 2017, Glen's Alzheimer's had progressed to an advanced stage, severely limiting his ability to communicate or recognize loved ones. Family members described both heartbreak and gratitude during that time. Heartbreak at watching a once vibrant soul slip away, gratitude for the memories they had shared. Kim Campbell later recounted moments when Glen would strum an imaginary guitar or hum a melody nobody else recognized, as if music were still pulsing through his veins long after words had failed him. Even in the quiet corners of his mind, something of that rhinestone spirit persisted. Eventually, in August of 2017, Glen passed away. News outlets across the globe reported it as the end of an era, a final farewell to one of country music's most beloved pioneers. But his passing didn't stop the conversation. Instead, it reignited discussions about Alzheimer's, the role of caregivers, and the powerful way that music can anchor a person's identity even when everything else slips away. People who might not have thought much about Glen Campbell found themselves moved by the tenderness of his story, by the unwavering devotion of his wife and children, and by the songs that still played on classic radio stations. speaking truths he could no longer articulate himself. Looking back, Glen Campbell's life serves as a bridge between old Hollywood glitz and the earnest storytelling of country music's golden age. At a time when the entertainment industry was rapidly evolving, when younger audiences were embracing rock and pop, and older ones clung to traditional country, Glen managed to speak to both. His recordings with the Wrecking Crew in the 1960s placed him in the heart of a major shift in American pop culture. His crossover hits in the 70s and 80s exemplified a blend of sincerity and commercial appeal, which not all artists could handle with such grace. And his final years, publicly confronting a disease that robs people of their memories, transcended music altogether. They touched on something profoundly universal, our collective fear of losing ourselves in the heartbreak of watching someone we love fade away. For many older viewers, Glen's journey resonates on a deeply personal level. Alzheimer's is something that has likely touched their friends, neighbors, or family members. Seeing someone so iconic face those same struggles is both comforting and sobering. It confirms that no matter how rich, famous, or talented you are, life's uncertainties remain the great equalizer. And yet Glen's decision to share his battle with the world reminds us that there's also a certain grace in vulnerability. It can create bonds of understanding and empathy that we might otherwise miss if we try to hide our weaknesses. Culturally and historically, Glen's significance lies in the way he bridged worlds. He helped shape what became the mainstream acceptance of country music, pushing boundaries without abandoning the heartfelt tradition that defined the genre. During the new Hollywood era, he connected with film audiences, bringing a touch of country sincerity to westerns, at a time when cinematic realism was on the rise. Later, as rock and pop continued to evolve, he stayed relevant by embracing collaboration and experimentation. In the twilight of his life, he stood as a beacon of honesty, shining a light on Alzheimer's in ways few celebrities had done before. All of these facets, musical innovation, mainstream success, personal struggles, and brave vulnerability, come together to form a legacy that is both enduring and deeply touching. His legacy carries practical lessons too, especially for older viewers. Many people find themselves or their loved ones dealing with memory decline, feeling isolated and uncertain about what the future holds. Glen's openness about Alzheimer's encourages conversations that can lead to better support systems, whether that's better research, more compassionate care facilities, or simply the willingness to talk about a subject that still carries a stigma. The courage he displayed by continuing to perform, even as his cognitive function slipped, is a powerful statement. While disease can change many aspects of our lives, it doesn't have to erase our identity or our passions. Until his body or mind prevented him from doing so, Glen chose to remain the musician he'd always been. Perhaps his last great lesson is that the art we create can outlive our own memories. Even when Glen could no longer remember the heights of his own achievements, the rest of us could remember for him through the songs, the performances, and the simple honesty of a man who brought joy to millions. Those who listen closely say there's a kind of eternal comfort in knowing that Glen's music will keep resonating in car stereos, living rooms, and concert halls for years to come. In that sense, while Alzheimer's may have robbed him of his recollections, it couldn't steal his lasting gift to the world. Maybe that's the true power of music. It remains etched in the hearts of those it touches, preserving a piece of the artist's soul long after they've gone. And that wraps up today's video. If this video resonated with you, please give it a like, leave a comment with your feedback, and subscribe to stay updated on upcoming videos. Appreciate you watching.